the Women in Architecture panel. You guys know me. My name is Daria, and my co-host Ferial. We are both third-year architecture students and Cpp Nomas board members. And our mission is to empower underrepresented groups in the field of architecture. In previous years, we were only able to host this discussion over Zoom, and now we have this amazing opportunity of having this discussion in person. Before we begin, because unfortunately she'll not be able to stay with us the entire discussion, in honor of Women's History Month, I would like to also thank our wonderful co-president, Akira. There she is. For her hard work in making this club a reality, so Akira, I forgot one thing. Everybody give her a round of applause. Please welcome our wonderful panelists who have generously donated their time and come to give their insights. Let's give them a round of applause.
Hi. Well, I think most of you know me. I've been with you guys in the studio. My name is Maria, and I've been teaching here for this is my 6th year, this year. But I've been working for over a decade. I went to school at UCLA for grad school and the University of Michigan for undergrad. And now I work at 2 firms, as you can see here. So I'm a project architect at 2 firms, Social Studies Projects, which is based in LA, and Ferial Architecture, which is based in Berkeley. And at Ferial Architecture, I work with really good friends from undergrad, actually. So I'm starting with that.
Awesome. Hi everyone, good to see you. My name is Patten, and I am a partner at Dagher, which is an architecture firm with an office in downtown LA. That's the closest location here. And I also serve as our higher education market leader, so I oversee all the work we do in our education sector. I went to USC for my undergrad, 5-year program, no grad school. Gosh, I'm like, what are the questions? Education?
Women in Architecture co-chair.
Yeah, well, thank you. So there's 2 of us here that are currently serving on the AALA Women in Architecture Committee. So I'm a co-chair of that committee, and Kristi will share a little bit more as well. So good to meet you all.
Good evening, I'm Eletrice Harris.
Please bring the microphone.
Oh, okay. So many little acronyms of which ones to use. So I'm originally from Chicago. I've been here for 20 years. I went to the University of Illinois at Chicago for undergraduate at Pratt Institute in New York for a master's in architecture. I'm a professor at Ferial University and teaching structure. So I'm actually an architect and a structural engineer, so I have that perspective. I'm also director of the SoCal Project Pipeline, which includes Nomas chapters in all 12 of the schools that we have them. But mainly our architectural summer camp and our architectural boot camp, which the entire third-year studio is working on a boot camp this year, so give them a hand. Yes. Yeah, so just happy to be here and share with the ladies and some gentlemen too.
Hi, my name is Kristi Paulson, and I am a firm with my husband, Paulson Boy Projects. Prior to that, I was part of Dagher Architecting, which is an international architecture office between Germany and the United States. I've also been a design principal at CGI Architects in Los Angeles. My background is my undergrad, I went to architecture school at the University of Washington in Seattle, and from there I got my master of architecture at University of British Columbia in Vancouver, and made our way to Los Angeles about 18 years ago after working in Seattle for a bit. And so yeah, it's been LA for 18 plus years now.
So we wanted to acknowledge that a lot of us here are just architectural students and we're at the beginning of our design journeys, and we're often looking for role models for inspiration. So we wanted to ask who you would consider to be one of your role models.
So I'll mention building architect and the distance architect. So we'll start with building. So since I work in really small firms, an architect we really look to is Elizabeth Roberts, who practices in New York. And what we really like about her practice is that she really kind of fuses interiors and kind of exterior, call it, and really kind of bridges everything together. And she's also trained in historic preservation, which working in New York and Los Angeles, we're working with a lot of times within existing conditions. So we're dealing with found conditions and preserving them and finding inspiration in that. I think this is really important in what we do now. So I think so that's kind of one side, and then the other architect that I really inspired by is Judith Chafee, and she practiced primarily in Arizona, and she taught extensively as well. And she taught at the University of Arizona, and she was the only female architect graduating from Yale in her graduating class, so she's kind of been a trailblazer all the way through. And she also worked primarily in single family, and is a kind of critical regionalism sort of approach to architecture, which was really kind of rooted in the place that she worked at. And so I think in that sense, she's really inspiring us.
I think I want to start with just saying that I've had many role models. I would say most of the people I look up to are people I work with or interact with in my work, and each and every person you work with, they feel go to school with. There's things, there's traits, there's ways they carry themselves, there's things they're good at that you start to say, wow, that's incredible. I want to be more like that, or I want to be able to do that. So there's a lot of just aspects of what I do in my day-to-day that I've sort of learned from other people. I've been able to take, the good of what they do that I think would be helpful in my career and how I want to present myself in the work I do. So lots of role models, male, female, you name it, everything under the sun. But there's two people in particular. So I was in Chicago too. I know you mentioned Chicago. So I worked in Chicago for 7 years for Carol Ross-Barney, and she was a gay gold medal winner 2 years ago, and she was amazing. I mean, as a woman for 20 to 30 person firm, and the work she did, what she cared about, type of projects we put after, which is really focused on public work and work for the people, really kind of led my career and what I wanted to do. So that became important to me to make sure I was focused on the projects and work that were giving back to the communities that I live in, that I'm working with. And then I'm another female architect from Chicago. I'm working with Jeannie King right now on the project. And she's just, both of them, it's like a Chicago women thing, I don't know, they're so down to earth and relatable, and superstar architects that you can just have a normal conversation, have a glass of wine with them, hang out, and it's just really refreshing to see that they don't let all the attention and everything else kind of get the best of them, and really what they're focused on every single day is just doing great work and presenting that work, and being focused on how they work with people, how they treat people, and just being badasses.
But for me, in architecture, ironically, I had all male role models for a very long time because this is a male-dominated profession, which we're changing a lot. But when I was 20 years ago, and we were just graduating and things like that, it was pretty heavily still dominated by males, and so I had these 3 architects in Chicago who were three of the founders of Noma, and they were 7 of the 12 that founded actually from Chicago. So all good things in architecture happen with Chicago. So we had, these strong role models, people who's practicing architecture. They all had their own firms, and I just looked up to them a lot. I never wanted my own firm, but I admired them and the trail that they blazed for us in architecture. But then I finally came across a lady that I just fell in love with her work. Her name was Washington, and she's out in New York. And she was one of the first African American women who practiced in New York and had her firm, and it's just like, oh my gosh, it's amazing. And so, since when I went to Pratt, I did get to meet her and work in her office for the summer, and just had got to see her work and move through this male-dominated profession. And she was a strong, direct person, and she was just tiny, because I'm tall, 6 feet, and she was like, really this tiny person, but with this huge personality, and she always would walk into a room and command it, and so I always admired that about her. And so she's phenomenal. I really appreciate the mentorship that she gave.
It was hard, I remember, to find women who were teaching in architecture, but one of the reasons I did go to the University of British Columbia was because of Patricia Patten. And she was, at that time, this was, I started my master's degree in 2000, so this was about 25 years ago. So I always admired Packard's work as architects, and so I thought it'd be great to go there and finally have like a known woman architect who was doing amazing work, and have have a stretch for her. She's really amazing. Her practice is amazing. She has a practice with her husband, and she's taught at the University of British Columbia for many, many years. And so she's definitely one of, as far as a woman in architecture, somebody I would want to sort of model my career from by seeing that, and the level and quality of her work as well. When I got into the profession, I met a woman who was not famous at all. Her name was Sviridova, but she was just a force. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Like, there was not a lot of women working in architecture either. And she was just an absolute force, had a great mentor. She still is a great friend in my life, and I met her about 25 years ago too. But then probably one of my best mentors was what became one of my business partners as well, which was Stefan Banish. And when I had originally worked for Banish Architects, and that was back in 2007, so I was there for a number of years, kind of working both internationally and nationally on many projects. But it was really great for me to have him as a mentor in my life, just showing me not only the quality of architecture, but again, also the business of architecture, and how learning business from a German man was actually really great because it was very direct and streamlined and not as fuzzy as some of the business I've seen in American architecture, but but you'll get there. You'll see that as you go into your career. But he's also been a very great mentor. So it's been mixed, of course. But there's also, I would say, if I were to look also at a woman right now who I think is doing really amazing work, I don't know her, but I admire her from afar and see what she's doing, which is Dorothy Management in Copenhagen. I find her work incredible, and it's amazing to see a woman-led office as well. Even in Denmark, where I feel like they're very progressive, you don't see that very often either, so it's pretty wonderful to see that as well.
So a lot of you mentioned potentially there being an absence of female role models for you, or architects, or faculty members. But as we notice this shift towards a more inclusive architectural field, how do you think this will impact the built environment? How do spaces benefit from having more diversity in their designers?
We need more perspective better, right? If we see architecture through one lens, we're constantly just being fed what we think we should know. But as we all know, we experience different things as we grow up, and we have different relationships to architectural space, and we have different relationships to culture, and how culture is defined for architectural space. And so the more voices that are end up creating this, and the more the view out there in the world about it, that having diverse student bodies and that diverse student bodies going into the profession of architecture, we just get a much more important understanding of, or a critical understanding too, of how people use space and how differently we use space often. Because there isn't one way, right? And there's no universal architecture that's like, this is the way and this is it. I mean, the beauty of having studios is that when you guys are all given a brief and you go into a studio and you're supposed to design something, and you have 13 students in a studio, or however many it is, and you have 13 different ways in which you're addressing the problem, right, or addressing the issues. That's a great thing. There's no one answer. It's about how you tackle the problem with kind of your insight and your perspective and honing that. So to me, that's extremely important in architecture.
Well, my hope is that architecture will follow the diversity of like the cities and neighborhoods and things like that, because they're becoming diverse and people are intermingling and cultures are blending. That architecture should reflect that, and I feel like at the moment it does not. Because those voices have not been heard or allowed in or even at the table, right? So we're progressively getting to the point where that diversity is spilled over into how we manage the firms, who's being hired, how projects will look, how we will think about moving through them. I feel like the feminine voice will bring a lot more softness to the way we do things and how we think, and so I'm looking forward to what that will bring. But my hope is that architecture will reflect the diversity of our nation, the community of wherever the building is going to be.
I'm going to get a little more granular because I think this is real, and it's, if you think about, there's all this sort of evidence coming out, right, that our healthcare system is based on research and things that were done based on our typical white male, to be honest, right? So everything we're doing is based on that. You know, how women's bodies react, we're not really thought about the same for a whole bunch of other things. Everything has been standardized in our country and our culture based on other typical frameworks, and I think architecture is the same. How we design restrooms is not about how women use restrooms or what is needed for us in restrooms. I had a young man in my office who was working on a project, and he was part of the project. There was a nursing mother's room, a lactation room, and he kind of was stumped, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you have 3 mothers on your team. Do you want to maybe ask them what you should do to help design this space? Because I think they're going to be able to tell you what would be beneficial and what would be useful here. So I think there's a lot that's coming through that I see on a daily basis, little details like that, heights of things, reach ranges, everything that is very different when you have different body types or different needs. And I think that's beyond just men and women, that's just sort of universally how we're starting to think better about the whole experience for a diverse type of people.
Well, I guess, as I was listening to everybody speak, just to also kind of dig deeper into my educational career, my first professor and my last were female, and so I've always had a kind of female thread through my education. And I don't know, maybe subconsciously that also kind of shaped the way that I behave in the world, in the profession. And I guess it's, I don't know, they kind of taught me to be sort of unapologetic and not to sort of be as acutely aware of, that you're woman, etc. It's more of just like I'm a person and I'm just going to kind of charge for it. So I guess it was kind of interesting to hear your perspectives on that. And I don't know if it's kind of generational shifts and as we kind of move further and further, that's going to sort of dissolve even further. So I guess that's kind of my take on it. But in terms of my kind of shifting into a professional career, in my very first office, right out of undergrad, and there was a woman named Teresa, and she was also a very kind of tutor woman, and it was also a small firm. So I feel like at every kind of step of the way, there was someone that was kind of just like moving forward right for us, and I think I really appreciate that as a shaping tool that's designing within my career. But in terms of day-to-day now, having worked in kind of larger offices and more boys club type offices and kind of flatter structure offices, but as I shifted into residential architecture and small firms, on my day-to-day, honestly, I deal mostly with women, especially because we also deal with a lot of interior designers, and those firms tend to be more female-led. And really where it kind of shifts to more of a male and a dominated structure is when we start working with GCs. And so that's still primarily male-dominated, and also structural engineering. So there's mostly male structural engineers that we work with. But I think in day-to-day interaction in my work, I would say is kind of male-dominated.
Yeah, thank you. So, Eletrice kind of already mentioned this, and when me and Ferial were researching about the topic, and we found out that architecture kind of remains to be a male-dominated industry. Just a quick quote from LA Times when I'm researching: in the United States, even though nearly half of architecture school graduates are women, only 18% of licensed practitioners are women. And so when we learned about this, we wanted to initiate the discussion about empowering women to achieve that licensure, to further enrich and advance the field. So the first question I have for this is, what advice would you give female students entering the workforce?
I think it's very different now than, let's say, when I graduated however many years ago. Offices everywhere I look is just much more balanced. I think my office is fairly well balanced. And I think there's a lot more opportunity. I think a lot of the percentage that you still see is probably in women that have been working for 10 plus years, because we're still kind of balancing out what's going on in school and graduates going into the workforce versus maybe those of us that have been out of school a little bit longer and the percentage of women we saw when we were in school. So I think that will start to level out and we'll see a better metric there. But I'm a working mother. Sounds like you are. Yes, okay. I still see, unfortunately, that I think the biggest barrier, the thing that I see the most of women maybe not getting a license or maybe leaving the profession is becoming mothers and feeling like there's not enough opportunity, or they want to change paths because architecture can be a difficult profession at times, a time-consuming profession. And so I think that's really what the profession is still trying to figure out, and how to make that a better experience for working mothers to want to stay in and to want to continue their licensure. I wouldn't say that I see a huge difference in women getting a license in my office at least versus men getting a license. It tends to be like it trends about the same in terms of years of experience and age and everything else. I have just as many men that say, gosh, it's really hard to get a license because I just had kids and I'm trying to deal with that and everything else as I do women. So it's a hard thing for just about anyone. So my biggest topic of like advice would be do it earlier. Get your licensure as soon as you possibly can, because you might feel like, oh my gosh, I'm working full time, this is so hard, I don't have time. Guess what? That idea of not having free time just gets less and less and less as you get more responsibilities and more on your plate as you get older. So I got it done 7 years after I graduated, which is rare, and it should be rare. So I was done before I had kids, which thank God, because it would have taken me probably another 5 years at least if I had.
I agree, as mothers, it's a different thing once you get into the profession, but for young people, or you young people, my main advice is to, well, first you must decide if you're going to stay in architecture and the path you're going to take. Because some paths, licensure is not going to help people go you. And I think making that decision early will help you. But for those that are going to take the traditional architecture path, licensure is extremely important, and you should do it immediately. Especially for the young ladies, because once, as we have said, motherhood comes, the climb of the corporate ladder is right in line with your marriage, kids, and all of that, and so it kind of takes a back seat. But if you can do it right away, focus on it before you get too serious about either the relationship or starting a family. For us, I think it's extremely important. And as mentioned, men are now taking breaks, maternity breaks. And but it's really important to kind of just get in there, get it done, so that you have it and it helps to propel you to the next level.
I would follow that too with, I actually do think licensure is really important, and I'll tell you why, because you spend, right now you're going through architecture school, and it's such a heavy lift, like you have a lot of work, you have a lot of school, to do all of this and then not get licensed, I'm always like, oh man, like it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of dedication and hours, and honing your craft and working through things, so I'll say one thing about licensure that's maybe a little bit different in the sense that one of the things that I think is amazing about licensure is it actually affords you a lot of opportunity. Because once you get licensed as an architect, you don't have to work for someone anymore. You can work for yourself. And you have a license to go and do so. That's a really powerful thing. And I always want women to do that because I'm like, you have, like, when you decide to have children, like, I mean, I've gone through that, right? Like, I went to work for a lot of different types of companies, some small, some large, international design firms. I had my son when I was 38, so a little bit later, so I had done quite a bit in my career before I had children. And I got licensed probably right around 35. And it's true, more like when I came into the profession, I got responsibility very, very quickly. And I was moving fast. And so I didn't have time to get my license. But I was doing everything as an architect, so I had to speed get my license because at the time I was being asked to be a partner in the firm. I couldn't be a partner in the firm unless I was licensed because it was part of the business structure. And so that, again, another reason to go get your license as quickly as possible, because it's not just getting your license and yes, but it affords you so much more possibility in your future. As I got older, and now I have a 10-year-old, I prefer to have my own office because now I have more flexibility. So that affords me more flexibility to have my license, to be able to have my office, and do something different. So it is important. I think if you really want to go into a route of being an architect or having that in your future, number one, get it as early as you can. I agree with that. But also get as much experience as you can too. Like when you're young, you have more time to go and get experience because once you have kids and all that stuff, your responsibilities get really strained. So when you have that time, just do it. Go and learn as much as you can. Go work for someone that you really admire, right? Learn as much as you can about the craft, and I think that's always really important when you're coming out of school.
I agree. You know, you spend so much time in school, so much effort that it's kind of provides to take a lessons. But I guess, and everybody's saying to do it quickly, maybe a slight kind of counterpoint. So, because I was so open to doing it, I spent a lot of time studying, and I sort of studied ahead of actually having that experience. And so, had I given myself maybe a couple more years to get that experience, I think that whole process would have been much simpler, much easier. I wouldn't have spent as much time memorizing information that was kind of foreign to me because I have not kind of dealt with it. So, I think there's a kind of balance on the strike between like being really gung-ho and just like going to do it, and then killing yourself to do it, and then just giving yourself maybe a little bit of slack, get that experience, and then have a slightly more kind of relaxed process of kind of going through it. I don't know. So.
My second question would be as leaders in architecture, have you experienced any gender-related biases while advancing your careers? And how did you navigate the pushback?
I think the biggest kind of pushbacks, and maybe getting more specific, is what we'll see is when we're interviewing for work is, again, because we're really small, my office only 5 people, one of my office 5 people, the other office is 3, so we're just very tiny. So, you know, we're very kind of directly, everybody's very kind of directly involved with the clients. And so interviewing for work is, you'll sometimes see a kind of skepticism from the client of whether we can actually do the work. And you just have to be confident and kind of push through it. That's kind of the only thing you can do. And once you sort of, because again, at our scale of work, a lot of our work comes through referrals or through word of mouth. And so once you do a good job, then you get referred to the work. So it's really kind of incremental change, kind of pushing through that. And what else was I train of thought? Excuse me. The kind of acute time I had, I really felt that bias is with a contractor, and sometimes you'll see contractors kind of not wanting to take direction from a woman. And I would say generally that's not the case. Like that's not the kind of standard. And for the most part, we have really good relationships with our contractors. But there have been a couple times when you can see they're kind of like chafing against this sort of direction that's coming from also I guess so. But again, I would say that's something to learn. I would also say that we live in a kind of environment that's generally much more diverse than the rest of the country. So we're in LA, we're in Seattle, and New York. I think we're also living in kind of bubbles where diversity is really high, and we just generally face fewer biases. I think you hear kind of the country as a kind of architect, and something I haven't done, but I imagine that the barriers and biases there are going to be much higher.
I think all of us have experiences with this, probably some horror stories. So I'll try to stick to things that I've experienced maybe more recently, because I do think just society as a whole has come a long way in my time since I started. But I think probably the most difficult thing that continues to sort of track my career is that I had a lot of responsibility and I got it pretty quickly in my career. So it sort of became being young and being female was an issue. And so some of you might experience that. And I still, to this day, every once in a while will go to a meeting or have an experience where I'm the partner in charge of the project, or I'm the one leading whatever effort that may be. But I'll have people in the room potentially speak to someone else in the room other than me, a male counterpart that might be older or just male, and sort of address their comments or address what they want to say to someone else. And, you know, I think that is at times difficult, and not in a way because they don't know. I actually had an experience at UC Irvine. We were leading a workshop. I led the entire workshop of what we were doing, and was sort of like, you know, doing everything, leading the workshop. We ended, and a person came up and started asking my colleague, who was an older man, all these questions. And he kept having to defer to me to answer, but that person kept asking their questions to my colleague. And it was just a very awkward situation of there's a disconnect here of what's going on. So I think that's a little bit more mistake. Contractors still a little bit of times for sure, just because of the way they work. But it's gotten a lot better. And I think all you can do is just be confident, own that, you know, and you know what your worth is, you know what you're good at and what you know. And there's plenty of times where maybe people won't take you seriously or think that maybe you don't know what you're talking about, and you just got to show them that they're wrong and that you absolutely know what you're talking about, and that's why you're there, and that's why you're not that spot there.
Well, I agree with both. We have all experienced that. If you're in this long enough and you're feeling you're going to get some version of those things. My horror story actually was a hiring situation. I was still in Chicago, which is a different place than here, and so very male dominated early on in my career. But I had set myself up to be excellent. And I knew that, and so every interview I went to, I presented that. So I went to this interview, and we got all the way to, okay, we really want to hire you. So I thought, yes, this is great. And so they asked the question, how much, you know, or what are you looking for? How important it is. And so I told him, and he said, he looked up and he said, well, we pay that to married men. So what? So I was very young in my career. Of course, I wasn't married or anything, and I was just like, well, what does that mean? Basically, like, I can't have that. I'm definitely not married, and I'm not, you know, a man. So I was thinking, okay, thank you, I left or whatever. And I had to ask people. I said, well, what was going on with that? And I feel like that was the first time I really had experienced, you know, bias in that way. And that actually happened to me once when I came here in California. First I went around my excellent portfolio and my resume, and I got the same kind of thing from a very prominent firm with that name. But he said something similar. So you will come up against it. Of course, I got another amazing job somewhere else. It didn't stop me or anything. Especially since that was the second time someone had said something to me about being male and that they can pay that. And we know that that's a discrepancy in general. In like not just in architecture or other professions that women are being paid less, but to actually have them say it to me was like really an eye-opener. So that was the biggest one. I mean, I'm sure there were some other sliding situations, of course, in meetings and things like that, but I pretty much am like, you know, I just do not pay any attention, especially, you know, after 20 years experience in the business and pretty much know your worth. I don't get bothered by that.
As everybody knows. I still have, there's always one thing in architecture I still haven't really figured out how to combat necessarily. And because you do get the comments every once in a while, like, who cares, like whatever, just, you know, move on, and that's like lame, whatever. And sometimes you get some weird comments from your clients or would-be clients or something like that, but you know, it's the world, you gotta move on and be you. The one thing that I found that's really hard in my career, a couple of times, and I just ended up departing and walking away because I didn't know how to really handle it. But I was in a situation where my career has I've been very focused on design leadership and leading and being a design leader within firms, and that's a very coveted role. And there's not women in it; it's very much male. Like men have to be the designers in here, and on multiple occasions, very good projects that I have spent my blood, sweat, and tears leading the design teams, the client, everything through. And then the men in my firm will cut me out of it, erase me at the very end, and put in a man. And they'll honor that man and put him out, and that will be the person who's the figurehead of the project. And the clients are just, even clients are like, what? Is the leading more of the project? And I've seen it so much that it's like, wow. Because I always think like, women have actually been in the industry for a long time, but they don't take credit for what they've done. Men take the credit that women's work within the profession. And those are some of the things that I've struggled with, I think, in my more recent, as I gained more, framework or place in firms or in my place in architecture. I felt like when I was younger, I didn't have that issue. Like people, I felt like I was a little bit more open. But it's like that last ceiling, the closer you get up there, it's like, oh, you can't have that. You can only go here. And so I would say that's probably the thing I struggled with the most, that I can't, always understand. That's a harder thing. I walk away from it because I never what can I do. The best revenge you can do is just not give you my work anymore. Just run away, and you're going to have to find somebody else to do your work for you. But that's a hard thing. That's like a hard thing to kind of realize that the profession really wants to honor men often, and men in very high positions, and partnership positions, and that type of thing. And so that's sometimes, I think, something that is difficult to kind of handle.
Like a good version of this.
Yeah, that's such a downer. I feel like we need to mess that up, right?
So not me, Kristi, all of us.
I had a great experience too, and this was something I took as a lesson to myself. So I'll share this quick story. Another meetings at a client's location. We were having workshops, and it was myself, two younger female designers, our manager. I didn't hear this because I was doing something else. I was talking to somebody, whatever was happening. And the client's project manager turned to my project manager and said, hey, can you get your assistants to do X, Y, and Z? I forget what it was. And he said, assistants? What do you mean? And he said, oh, the two girls that are with you, can you get them to do whatever it was? And he, in front of everyone, said, those are not assistants. They are architectural designers. They are a key part of our team. And I want you to call them what they are and treat them with respect. And I was floored because, first of all, most people don't react that way to a client. They can be a little timid about how to work with a client. But also, I was just like inside, I was like, oh yeah, good job, Noma, thank you. So I think that's just something for all of you to take away, for all of us to take away, is when you see something happening, don't be afraid to call it out, because most people are expecting that. And I think it's a lesson that they need to learn as well, because that's the only way we can change this stuff from not happening. So that's a little bit of a more uplifting part of that.
So I'm noticing a lot of us here today are third-year architecture students in particular, and we're all starting to apply for internships and engaging with architecture in a more professional capacity. And because so many of you have such an array of experience at large or small firms, we wanted to ask what differences you noticed between these firms, or what you look for, or what students you would look for in terms of a firm and its culture.
And I just probably put it in, friend of a friend is my friend is looking to grow a firm, and that's how I transitioned to looking to residential, single family residential. But I guess, through all of that, what I really learned is, and when you come out of school, you might not really know what you want to do until you kind of go through it, and go through and experiment with different kind of structures, both firms, to and things like that. So I think some people come out and do exactly what they want to do right away, but I think that's just not the norm. And it's also just really difficult to, at least in my experience, to get your first job. And so I think just getting that first job, getting your foot in the door, and then I think from there you can really start to kind of work your way through what it is that's important to you. And so for me, I think realizing also that because where we live, the kind of majority of urban fabric is residential, and so I really found much more satisfaction kind of working on that scale, working more directly with the client, working on smaller teams, and I think the other thing that's maybe not talked about enough is just politics, both office politics and client politics, and so just in terms of my personality, I just realized that maybe I liked the work, but I was just not cut out to do it. I think for me the most, the part that I liked the most from big projects is going on site and just doing CA and just really kind of realizing that project. But a large project can take like 7 years, right? And so I just ultimately came to the realization that I couldn't do that. And I think a lot of people thrive on that. They really just dig into this one giant thing and they can live through a decade of that and find satisfaction and fulfillment for that. So I think it's really just looking at yourself, figuring out what's important for you, and if you don't hit that right away, I think that's also okay. I don't think the first 3 years of your professional career is solidified when you're done to the rest of your life. So just kind of knowing that, not being fearful of trying out different structures, different offices, things like that.
Your first 2 to maybe call it 8 years in the profession are just a great time to test things out. And that's when you're figuring out what type of work you're most interested in, what type of office, what scale of office. All of those things make a huge difference. And so don't be afraid if you're not feeling it. Although, don't change jobs every year. That does come back to haunt you in trying to get a job in the future. Trust me, those resumes tend to go to the side. But it's okay to test things out. It will help you in figuring out where you belong, what you need. I think the other thing, when you go to interview, firm culture, the vibe of the office, what you're seeing, who's there, how diverse is the group of people there? What is the general age range? Is the age range diverse or not? I mean, there's a lot of things you can read from an office tour. So if you go and interview in an office, always ask for an office tour. Don't just, go in a conference room and not meet anyone other than, a partner or principal or somebody senior that you're meeting with. Ask to walk around, ask to see what's happening. Because I think you can gain a lot of knowledge of what you see, and if you feel like that's going to be a good fit for you or not.
My big advice would be to pretty much try all levels if you can. Like you guys are third year, most of your life. Do a small firm this summer, and then next summer do a larger one, because you can never know. Someone's important, well, not in these first few jobs, but once you get graduated and really want to find a solid job, I'm really big on making a decision of what type of architecture you want to practice first. The thing about being an intern, if you're an intern for at least 3 years after you graduate, they don't call you that anymore, but you are. Taking those 3 years and really decide when you're going to go down the path. It could be residential or hospital or airports, whatever. And then explore that, really explore, because internships are about you learning something. Most of the time, we don't go there to benefit the firm and make the money. Not too much. Pretty much, you're going to learn something from them. You will be giving back your time and energy and But learn as much as you can. I mean, if they stick you in a corner and tell you to do bathrooms, do that, but check out what the project manager is doing and the project architect and the partner. I mean, you have to be aggressive in just learning your surroundings, and you will be able to see which one of those positions you actually want to be in. You'll see what they do and how they move through their day-to-day of the project and their contribution. And so make those decisions this summer and next summer before you actually are going for your semi-permanent job. It's a little bit more permanent these days. But use this time, the next 3 summers, to explore. And you can do that at different levels, firms, and just for the record, architects are everywhere. They're at the state, they're at the federal, they're at universities, they even have a design and construction department here, where people are actually doing architecture on the campus. So there are so many other avenues other than just the firms. Museums have architects, hospitals, every institution, libraries, the Army Corps of Engineers, I mean, we go down that route. There's so many different avenues, and I just encourage you to look into all of it and take these next 3 years and work it out.
That's a great point also, like talking about how architecture isn't just fully traditional architecture going to an architecture office or an architecture firm. There's a whole client side, like almost every big company that, you know, at least that has been a client of mine has a real estate and architecture team. So architects do go over to that side, so it's a great point because it's not always just traditional, I'm gonna go to an architecture office and that's gonna be it. I would say yes, it's definitely about your personality because, I mean, I think my honest job when I came out of my undergrad was like a terrible job, but I'm glad I got it all the way, and it actually, I met somebody there who led me to my next job, which was awesome. So it's sort of, it's really hard to get that first push out into the architecture world. So even though it seems like a little bit horrible, maybe just take the step and get in there and meet people, because architecture tends to be a referral base. Like people find, they're like, hey, you should go talk to my friend in this, you know, office or whatever. Like, for example, I moved from Seattle to Los Angeles and I knew no one in Los Angeles. And I remember talking to a principal in my offices, and I was moving in here because my boyfriend was going to UCLA, so it wasn't like I was leaving the firm because I didn't like him or anything like that. So I had 3 principals get in contact with people down in Los Angeles and say, Kristi's amazing, we were so sorry to lose her, but hey, and boom, I think I had 10 interviews. So I just scheduled a trip to Los Angeles and boom, 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 10 interviews. I mean, that's how kind of the architecture world works. It's like the moment it's like you and how you do it and how you interact with people, your integrity and how you treat people and work with people has so much to do with where you move in the profession, because you'll find that a lot of people will be like, hey, you should talk to my friend over here. We're going to go to New York, hey, we talk to this person, you know, whatever it might be. And then I would also say, like, you know, it depends. Sometimes when you're in school, you might have an idea about like typology. I didn't. I just really wanted to design. I just really like to work with really great designers and thinkers. And so that was sort of my strategy too. I was like, I really want to work for these offices, which I know is going to be a bit of a grind and it's going to be tough, but I had a fucking blast. Like the nights that I stayed up all night with some of my coworkers because we were trying to get a couple models finished for a big interview or whatever. That was the time where we really connected. They're some of my best friends to this day. And so it is hard work, but you can get a lot of it. You find your synergies, you find the people you like, you find your connections, and that's where your connections start. And so it's like, as you start into the profession, that is the moment when your connections start to grow, and they will be with you your whole profession. And you're going to need them sometimes. And then it's going to act reciprocally, which is interesting, because as you start getting up into the ranks in architecture, like there's so many young people I've mentored through offices, and now they're coming up in the ranks. And then I'm like, well, I might need to ask them for a job. You know, it's like, it's amazing how like, kind of all sometimes comes full circle because you realize the people that, you know, that you've worked with and were nurturing through the process are also going to get up there. There may be a different opportunity in the future for that connection. So it's really interesting to think how that all works. But yeah, but you'll find, you can feel it. I mean, you can feel it when you interview and if you have an opportunity to interview, you can kind of understand a little bit more about whether it feels like a good fit or not.
And this is a bit of an individual question for Maria. So we know that you work at a women-owned business, and we were just curious to start a conversation about what differences you might have been noticing working at this firm as opposed to other firms, and if it's impacted your guys' approach or design philosophy or just general atmosphere.
Sure. Well, I think the primary difference is just scale, the scale of work and scale of firm. So everything just gets a lot more intimate out there. And if you have your nose kind of everything, you know, we review like contracts together, we review like scope of work, like everything just like from the very beginning, like what is the interview gonna go like? So things just are much more intimate. So when I worked in larger firms, like I was never involved in like the pursuit of the work, interviews, or just the very kind of macro scale stuff. I worked as a PA, but I was never involved in kind of like the back of politics, things like that. So that's a huge kind of change from that. In terms of what it's like from just collective women versus just a kind of standard firm, we actually just hired our first male employee, and we were like, you know, this is actually great. Like we really needed that to inject that. Like maybe we just got like too, you know, maybe the energy got too much. So, but I don't know. I think women just, you know, women do at the end of the day think differently. They approach projects differently. They approach things a lot more kind of from a much more sensitive nature. We also work. You know, most of our clients have families, so considering what the family needs are also is really important. So, you know, viewing things from that lens as opposed to a male-dominated office or a male perspective is, I think, an advantage in that sense. And at the end of the day, most, like on our client side, we usually are dealing with the matriarch, with the family, right? Like they're making most of the kind of design decisions on a kind of day-to-day basis when you do need to review a particular stage of a project. So, am I answering the question? I kind of like meandered, but I think it's hard to answer it from just like a simple like, I think it's really just like everything is just so different. So, there's a lot of small offices that are just mostly men, right? So, I've not been there, so it's hard for me to kind of give that perspective. But I think it's also just, you know, I don't know, I'm just gonna put it out there, but generally like women can be more emotional, and so like I feel just much more comfortable just like if I'm having a bad day that like I can be like really honest about it, and not have to sort of like, you know, just rank it. So just the communication, I think, can be much more direct and much more honest than I've had in the past. So, so that's also an option. Of course, you know, like, that can boil over, but you know, usually doesn't.
Now, we can't go without talking about technology and mentioning AI. How do you envision the architectural field changing with the advances in AI softwares for architecture?
I'm optimistic that it will get there, is building and zoning code. So it's a really draining part of our job, especially most of our work is in LA, and so we kind of get to know the code really well, but if you step just outside into like Burbank and things like Glendale, you know, it's like you parse through that code and it can take you like several days just to go through that because things can just be very different. And I would love for AI to just be able to synthesize and give it an PAN number, and it's just tell me everything that applies to it, because it takes so long. And I've tried experimenting with that, just asking ChatGPT questions, and it's just unable to do it. So for me, technology is something that should take away the nuisance part of our job. We move from hand drawing to digital drawing, so just not taking away the fun part, not replacing people, but just making the unfun parts much easier. So I'm optimistic that there are things that AI can do for us that doesn't just replace us as good thinkers.
Yeah, I think it's really probably most powerful in sort of road tasks and how to make those go more quickly, how to get through things that would typically take a lot of time but maybe not have as much payoff. There's a ton of discussion in my firm right now around AI and things like meeting minutes, or you've probably been on Zoom meetings and stuff, and people have automatic AI transcription, and so we're trying to figure some of that out, because there's also risks that come with AI when you're in a firm or you're in a firm, because you can't have AI start to replace things that are actually part of your record keeping and documentation of decisions made and things that have happened. So there's a lot there that I think is left to be figured out. We see all sorts of things. Design iterations, you can change things, you can study things really quickly, whether that's just internally or that actually goes to a client. But it still just takes away some of that time constraint commitment of people working through different solutions that might take days or hours to be able to just plug some stuff into AI and kind of see what you get out of it. And that might help you explore what's worth taking further or what's worth exploring further. So I think there's a huge variety of ways that we're starting to see it and starting to implement it, but with the caveat that there's always a risk or there's a side effect. So, we gotta be conscious of that.
We do have to embrace technology in general, because we've gone from hand drawings to these computer drawings, and renderings are now not done by hand. Sketching is getting pretty old, because of the computers can do these things faster, grander. So we do have to, I think as a profession, make a decision, right, how far we want to allow this technology to take over. But we always have to hold on to the design thinking, how people move through spaces. The computer would never be able to do that on its own. So we could program it to do that, but I feel like that's the part that we have to hold on to. We can use these tools for these other aspects. How it's affected it now, no one really knows. We're still trying to investigate. I haven't seen one that actually designs on its own yet. We're toying with the automated sort of reading stuff and the order-free, pretty much administrative part of architecture that we're toying with AI. But I think it's coming, just like AutoCAD came and now it's Revit, and right on Revit, whatever new 3D program is out there. And we just have to adjust. So we shouldn't run away from it or turn our backs on it, because it's inevitable that it will infiltrate our profession. And so we need young people to learn it and get into it, because you would be us very soon.
So just to close things up here, we wanted to note that many of our panelists have involvements in a number of organizations, either as lecturers or as leaders, like the Sopranos Project Pipeline or the Women in Architecture organization. So we wanted to ask what motivates you to do this work, or how practicing architecture outside of a traditional facility maybe has impacted you or your work as designers.
One is I served as a student mentor every year for USC students. That's where I graduated from, sorry everyone. It's also much closer to downtown LA. I am past chair for this organization called SCUP, which is Society college and university planning. So that relates to the work I do because I'm focused on higher education as clients that I work with and doing college and university projects. And then I'm the co-vice chair, sorry, I'm getting this right, co-vice chair with WIA, which is Women in Architecture. So to me, it's sort of these different areas of interest that I personally have that I get involved in, but then it's just a great way to get your brain continuously outside of like the project work and the day-to-day grind of what you're doing in an office. You just need some other perspective. So working with students helps remind me like what's important in the profession, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve. It also helps me professionally because I do college and university projects. So continuously meeting with students, getting their perspectives, being engaged with that helps in the work that I do. The organization that's more aligned with my profession, I meet clients, I'm meeting people that are really helpful for my network and everything else that's happening, and giving back in a way to that organization through the work I'm doing. And then WIA is just really rewarding because I get to meet with other women and talk about issues we're facing, how we can change the industry, the profession, and getting people involved in AIA as well, so understanding just the architecture industry. So for me, it's like I'm giving my time and energy to these, but I'm getting a lot that helps me sort of stay grounded and well-grounded in what I'm doing. I'm also married to an architect, so yeah, we can't kind of get away from it. That's how I'm saying that.
I think, well, I took a break between when I graduated and when I got into teaching, but there's a kind of living vicariously through you all, where when you start working, you just have to work on a different level. There is the kind of grind, and so living in this conceptual dream world through you guys is really fun. Yeah, and then it is really fulfilling to kind of see you all, even just through the course of a semester, and grow through your project is just really lovely and wonderful. Just every single one of my students has also had really brilliant ideas, and it's just kind of seeing that through each of you is really, really exciting. So yeah, and in terms of the other pursuits, also in a kind of similar vein, I got into ceramics after grad school, mainly because there was this one class I really wanted to take and I didn't. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to try working with clay after. And I read a lot of designers and architects through that too. I think there's a kind of gravitation to working with hands and this kind of work with objects, engaging at kind of smaller scale. So I definitely don't have that much time to do it now, but in any case, I did meet some good friends through that as well. So.
Well, this is going to sound very motherly, but I love to cook. I am crazy about cooking, and I actually really found my love of cooking through architecture, which is interesting. So when I was in my undergraduate experience in architecture, I got to go to Rome, which was nice, study abroad programs and that type of thing. There was a woman who started the Rome program from the University of Washington. Her name was Austria Sviridova. She's fantastic, incredible woman in architecture, but she's probably the first woman that really saw in architecture that had done pretty amazing things, and then she had created this. But she said that when you come into the Rome program, she said, she's like, an architect who doesn't cook is no good. And so she made all the students take a cooking lesson while we were in Rome, and because she said, cooking is all about textures, and you have to really understand the ingredients you're working with, just like architecture. You have to understand space, you have to understand how these things work together, how you can create things out of seemingly nothing, right? But one of the things that cooking got me really excited about is that architecture is really slow. And it's like, it takes so long to get like a design finished into completion. But cooking, man, you can like get into it really quick. And so for me, it really satisfies that other side where I'm like, when I come home, it's a way for me to relax, to just like go into the refrigerator, oh, I'm gonna put these things together and make some really great meal for my family. And it's just something that brings me like immense joy. So it seems like a really basic thing, but it's my biggest stress reliever, and it's also one of the things I enjoy. My husband loves eating. He's also an architect too, and he's not fat. He loves eating, but he eats like a 400-pound person, but he's very skinny. So it's great to have a family who loves that. But I don't know. I think when you're creative, it's kind of your same with like sculpture or art. It's architecture is so wonderful, but it can be very slow. Sometimes you just really like you're saying, you live this like the beauty of the conceptual world. It's so fun to create, but so many times it takes that creation like years to finally find its completion. You're just fighting for it for years and years to make sure that it still has a voice at the end. And so to find those things that are close to you, that like whether it's sculpture or doing something that you find really rewarding can be really satisfying. I think that's great for architects. And I think you guys all know this since you're in school. Yeah, architecture is a bit of a lifestyle, right? We love to travel because what do we like to do? We like to go see architecture. Of course, some has like gone to way too much architecture. That's like you go and you travel and eat food, you understand, you go out there and learn new things. I also think that's super important as an architect. There's a great Finnish proverb that's like, if you never travel, you'll be full of prejudice. And it's like, it's so true for architects too. It's like, you gotta get out there and see stuff and see how differently people use space, not just in your own, office or your own city. You need to go and see stuff. It's kind of our duty as architects, so that we remain educated through our years and really, like, I always think like when I'm sort of in like a design slump, my husband and I was like, we need to go somewhere. We need to like go and get our brains joggled again and go see really interesting things. And it's not always like a big, museum or cathedral or whatever. Sometimes it's just something really like small and intimate, or a small house or studio, or something that's not even like famous architecture, but just being able to see stuff and like absorb it and experience it. There's always, I think that's a great tool for being architects, and continue keeping your toolbox fresh, right? Because you're always trying to draw from something. So I'd say that's kind of thing.
With that, we would like to thank our panelists, and we have a little thank you gift for you for giving us your time and your insights. We really appreciate it, especially in honor of National Women's History Month. So thank you guys for making the trip out here and talking to all of us here today. It was a lovely experience, and I think all of us definitely were enriched by this conversation. So thank you. And thanks for everyone.